Hi, everybody. My name is Mariana, and I am coming to you from my cat infested living room to talk to you about stuff that interests me. If you see any cats walking around, then enjoy, I guess. And this time, the video is not exactly scripted. I don't have a script, but I do have notes because it's a serious topic, and I think that covering all the bases and like everything in general is very important. So I will be looking to my computer, which is here behind Hef, and I'll just referring to my notes if need be. Thank you for being here. A couple of weeks ago, I saw a video about the rise of spiritual psychosis on TikTok. And just full disclosure, my interaction with TikTok and like my experience of TikTok is usually commentary videos on YouTube. I don't scroll TikTok at all. So I'm just reacting to what I've seen in the original video. This video is not a response, it's just something that gave me this overall thought process that I wanted to explore with you and maybe talk to you as a witchcraft or like magic practitioner to other witchcraft magic practitioners in regards to what some call spiritual psychosis. This video is not about spiritual psychosis. I will not be critiquing or reacting or like calling anybody out. This is just generally about my view of what others call spiritual psychosis and maybe how to prevent it or work to not experience things that could fall in under this general umbrella, if that makes any sense. First of all, I would like to say that I think that the term spiritual psychosis is wrong and it's generally harmful. It is harmful to people who experience some sort of adverse effects to their practice, and it is generally harmful on a wider societal sense, because if we call willy-nilly things spiritual psychosis, the only thing we are doing is basically demonizing mental health and demonizing spirituality in this case as well. And I think that's just counterproductive. Let's just not call people who are having experiences of any kind, we'll get to that later, of any kinds psychotic, and let's just delve deep into what maybe can cause adverse symptoms or experiences, or how do I call it? Because it's not delusions, it's not hallucinations, it's maybe, I don't know, a warped or detached sense of experiencing reality in like the worst sense of the word. First of all, I think that calling things like what we are going to talk about, spiritual psychosis, again, is very harmful. It conflates actual mental health issues with spiritual experiences, and first of all calls these spiritual experiences like mental health crises, which I don't think they are often. Like, so, of course something can happen, but like it's not a rampant epidemic on TikTok that people are having actual mental health crises. And secondly, it's diminishing the value of the experiences people have. And maybe that's the right word that that I want to call it. I think it's just a misdefinition of a spiritual experience sometimes. Off the top of my head, a lot of the videos that were mentioned in the original video that like inspired this whole thing were people thinking or like convinced that they are speaking or communicating with spirits, with gods, with demons, and having bad experiences with it or with them, being convinced that a pagan god has convinced them to do something wrong, or generally had like an impact on their life. And I wanna say two things. I wanna say that spiritual experiences, spirits, gods, demons, the communication with them, the experiencing them and like working with them is absolutely real and is absolutely valid, and anybody can do it. Anybody can try to do it, anybody can succeed in doing it in one way or another. However, the human brain also has a tendency towards confirmation bias and towards finding things that will reaffirm what we think or what we wish. If I were to want to make a contact with some sort of spirit, then I would like really wish like to, I don't know, work with a goddess or do whatever without actually like taking actual steps towards that work. If I were to like just really wish, my brain and the way I experience spirituality and the reality of everyday life, my brain for sure will find ways to acknowledge or give me the confirmation that that god or goddess or spirit has entered into my life and has initiated communication, if you know what I mean. Is that an actual contact with the spirit, or is it something that I have just convinced myself in my mind? At first glance, I cannot know. I would have to do some divination, I would have to do some more work to confirm, to ask for specific signs and for specific communication that I can understand. If it's your first experience, it can be difficult to discern what is just me seeing things like as a confirmation bias. So if I, for example, want to work with a goddess who has like crows are her sacred bird, and by chance it's November where I live, the chance of me seeing crows is super high. It could be just a natural occurrence that because of the season crows are in my area, and my brain will conflate this as, oh, I've never noticed crows here before, and now I'm seeing crows and I want to work with this goddess to whom the crows are sacred. That means that this is a sign from the goddess. But the question is it? Is it, or is it just something that I have started noticing now because I have shifted my mindset a little bit? Another story, this one is real, the other one was just an example. In my early 20s, I used to do a lot of divination, and the way I do divination is usually I work with a spirit or like a deity or a patron god, and I ask the questions of them, and they basically provide me with jumpers from my deck. I don't actually pull cards. I almost exclusively read jumpers, and I do it based on a communication with some sort of entity from outside. I don't usually ask myself, maybe also because of like this whole topic that we're talking about. I tend to try to ask an entity that I already have a relationship with, that I already know the way they answer, the way they communicate with me, and I can discern when that entity is communicating with me, as opposed to when I'm reading into things or when the communication gets hijacked, which is also possible. In my 20s, I had a feeling that I was like being contacted by an entity, and it was very strange. It was quite uncomfortable. I wasn't at that time very open to like making new relationships, but I was like really feeling that there was an extra presence. It was a strange feeling. The way cards jumped out of my deck felt a little bit different. The overall tones and messages were a little bit like harder to read, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes you get a spread, or like some cards fall out, and you just get an image and it's like there, and you know, oh yeah, this is the line that I'm supposed to like read this card through. And at that time it was just like different, you know. It was very archetypal and very unclear, and then maybe it was because the connection wasn't very set. But I got very like not obsessed by finding out like what this was, who this was, but very like set and focused on finding out, because to me it was like also a sign of potential, like not danger, but like you don't know like who this is, what they want. So I was like very wary and like wanted to like figure it out. And I also at that time wasn't very good at questioning, not as in I didn't know how to ask question, but I wasn't very adept at figuring out like who I'm speaking to, you know, like the actual investigation of things. There is a cat playing on the floor with my backpack, and maybe you will hear it. I'm so sorry, but I'm not taking the backpack away from her. She is having too much fun. And one night I was like done with it, and I was like, I'm finding out tonight who this is. And I put myself in like a meditation slash trance state and like really focused, and I sat with my cards and I just kept shuffling and kept asking like, who are you, who are you. I think it took like an hour or hour and a half, and it was like very, the feeling when you're trying to talk to somebody who doesn't speak your language but wants to communicate. So it was like very the feeling of, oh, I understand that it like you're trying to communicate with me, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what to what to like take from it. And I was like, no, you just, who are you, who are you, who are you. And after an hour, after like, reading the jumpers and stuff in my head, I remember it's been 16 years. I still remember it to this day. At one point, I received like a word that kept repeating in my head, and I don't really have like an inner voice like that sounds like something, but it was like different. It had a different flavor, it had a different cadence, and the word was Heliopolis. I don't think if in my 20s I have ever thought about Heliopolis or whatever it was, and I didn't understand it, and I kept being like, who are you, what is this, what does this mean? And the only response was like kept going was Heliopolis, Heliopolis, and like kept repeating for like 20 minutes. And then a certain number of cards fell out, and I just knew I had to put them in like a triangle shape, and they were like this, and it kept repeating the Heliopolis. And then I was, and at one point I was done. Okay, I was like, this is just not leading anywhere. I have no idea what this word means. I have no idea what you are like trying to say to me. But I knew, because I like studied mythology for a long while, that I knew that Heliopolis was not a name of an entity that first of all I was interested in working with. And second of all, I just knew it wasn't a name of an entity. So I knew it wasn't a name. I knew it wasn't an answer to my question. And that is a red flag, to be completely honest. If that entity isn't able or willing to answer your question, it is a red flag. In my story, it wasn't that big of a red flag, because it turns out I actually didn't know the name of the entity that was trying to communicate with me. And apparently the whole thing with the tarot wasn't working for them or wasn't working for me. So I actually had to go and Google Heliopolis, and then through a series of Google searches, I actually got into like it was an obscure at that time for me Egyptian deity called Geb. But it took a while, and after I actually like understood the message, because like this is murky because it's been 16 years, but I think the path how I got to Geb was that in a city in like Egypt, it was a city called Heliopolis, and there was a temple to this deity, and it was like, I think maybe the only temple that existed at that time to that deity. And I got to that, and then I did some confirmation readings, and I confirmed that this was that entity. And it was interesting, but it took work, and it took huge tries and huge effort to find out. What I'm trying to say is that there is a huge difference between what comes from inside of our minds, what comes from our inner monologue and inner voice and higher self and normal self and conscious self and unconscious self, and the self in general. It has a flavor, it has a tone, it has a certain vocabulary, it has a certain color and certain haze. And it's very important in spiritual practice, especially again in the like spirit model work that some of us do, to really be attuned with what the self, myself in my case, yourself in your case, and I mean your pause self, not yourself, and my pause self are like, and what they sound like and what they feel like and who I am and where I start and where I end, and to discern in our practice where this boundary is. And boundary in the sense, am I still influencing myself towards something, or is the influence I'm feeling external and coming from outside of myself into me? Do you know what I mean? We tend to scroll social media, and we tend to, I said that word, but in this case I'm saying it very, very thoughtfully. We tend to consume things without critical thinking, without giving them thought, without interpretation, without analysis. And we just consume, and we like scroll TikTok, or like scroll Instagram in my case, or like, I don't know, Facebook, YouTube's, whatever. And we don't analyze how what we are reading, listening, seeing influences like ourselves, and what sticks and what doesn't stick, and how we feel about it, and what it evokes within us. And then we have a hard time sometimes discerning what are our thoughts brought on by external influences like traumas, or let's leave it at traumas for now, because like there is a lot of things that are traumatic that we are being exposed to on the daily, something that 50, 60 years ago would be not unthinkable, but it would be unheard of. And we get exposed to stuff like that on the daily in like tiny microdoses. And I'm getting on a tangent, it's not what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is, we tend to just take in stuff and not discern where that external stuff ends and where we begin, and what the relationship is on the border between the two, because that's where most of the like tension and like change happens as well. And then we can think that some of our thoughts and feelings and things that we notice in the moment are external, where in fact they are happening within our selves. You know what I mean? What I want to like not challenge you, but what I want to offer as an exercise, or as a way to help you and help me and help us discern where we end and where the rest of the world begins, is to first of all slow down the scrolling and slow down the consumption. And when I see something, to actually like think about it. I used to read a lot of books. That sounds horrible, but like when I was younger, I used to read a lot of like prose, novels and stuff, and be a few a week as well. But every time I finished a novel, I also remember that I had sometimes like trouble getting out of that world, and having the feelings of, oh, I wish it didn't end. I wish I could stay in that world. And I also remember I would spend a few hours like thinking back on the book and cherishing that feeling and cherishing that experience of that book. But those hours also served as a way to detach myself from that world, and not to get lost in it, and lost in the feeling of being somewhere, and in like dreamland. When you read, you see images, you are somewhere else, you transport in a way. And it is a sort of dreamland where you end up, and you need the time and the space to reflect and to disconnect yourself, or distance yourself, and get back your like individual, this is me and this was the book and I enjoyed it, I would like to stay there, but this is my life and this is the book. Nowadays you see a short film or short video, or like a funny story or something on TikTok, and you scroll past it, and you don't get that time to reflect on hey, this is me, this is the feelings and thoughts this evoked, and these come from this TikTok or from this Instagram reel. You, as the same way you can see of 3 seconds of something gruesome. It's not that far back where this happened on Instagram to people, where they were scrolling reels and there were horrible things. You could see 3 seconds, maybe you consciously don't even register the trauma that happens, but your brain does, and it leaves you with some sort of bit of a feeling, but you've already scrolled up and you're looking at somebody cooking butter chicken, and that feeling has not processed, but it's still in you. It's the visual, the image is still there somewhere. And we collect thousands like this, not only on Instagram, but general, with reading news headlines and stuff. We collect thousands of these, and we don't give ourselves enough time to process and to separate, because we are off to the next thing that we consume. And I can see how that could create spiritual experiences that are purely driven or purely coming from inside, but feel like they are from the outside, because I don't know my inside. And if I don't know my inside and it tells me something, I could feel like this is something foreign, something coming from outside. And then you can get people who are convinced that they are in communication with a demon and that they are cursed and that they need to do X, Y, and Z to get rid of that curse. But in reality, maybe they are also only dealing with intrusive thoughts and unprocessed things in their bodies. And then of course you can also have the other side of the thing. I'm not trying to shit on anyone here. You can also get the other side of the thing, and that is that you actually do get outside influences from a spirit or from a person, and you don't recognize that it's from the outside, and all of a sudden your world is shitty. You feel bad. You have malicious thoughts towards yourself, and you don't know what to do, and your only explanation is, I am the reason this is happening to me. And I think it's very, very important for us to find that distinction of where I end, where the outside world begins, how these two things feel in regards to each other, to me, and know if something is happening to me, if I feel something, if I think something, if that has my own flavor, if it has my own vibration, if it's from me, or if it's something that's coming from the outside to me. And to do that, I think we need a lot of meditation in the broadest sense of the word. I mean, meditation in being with yourself, allowing yourself to be bored with yourself, allowing yourself to stay in silence, allowing yourself to process your emotions, allowing yourself to take something in, be it a book or a video, a movie, and then sit with that video or book or a movie for an hour after you finished, and just processing the feelings that it brought up, the thoughts that it brought up, maybe journal a little bit, but actually try to discern what feelings and what emotions it brought to me, and how many of those resonate with what I feel, or if it's something that has just purely been brought on by the movie being so super emotional that it's a message from the outside. Because a lot of art, a lot of movies are made to evoke certain feelings in you, and it's nature of art, to be honest. And you still need to discern whether the emotions you're feeling are evoked by the art and by the work that you have interacted with in some sort, or if, for example, the emotions that you feel towards the work have nothing to do with the intention of the artist or of the creator, but are something that is a reaction to what you have seen. An example, okay? You can have a movie about a couple going on a cruise, like, because it's their honeymoon, and it's like a rom-com movie, and it's about like them, I don't know, having fun, being in love. And the intention of the artist is to evoke feeling of romance and like lighthearted fun into you and just uplift your mood. But in your life. Maybe you have been, I don't know, tossed off of a boat in a wave, and basically the whole idea of boats is like super traumatic to you. And that whole movie can evoke very uneasy feeling in you, because you're expecting when that crash happens, when everything goes to hell and everything goes wrong, and you sit there and like tight and just expect when it becomes the horror movie that it is. And it never does, but it still leaves you in that tension. And that's what I mean by exploring what is the emotion that maybe has been intended by the author, and what is the emotion that what I'm seeing and what I'm interacting with brings up in me in terms of memories and in terms of my experiences. Is the feeling of tension and horror intended by the author? Is it something that is the movie was supposed to bring up in me, or is it something that I have brought up in reaction to what I'm interacting with, if that makes any sense? And I think that a lot of times we don't think about this distinction, and you see a movie, you feel horrified, and hence that movie is a horror movie, even though the reaction is purely based on your own experiences. And similar things, I think, can also happen with spirit and in spirit work, where an interaction with a spirit can either be the interaction that the spirit intended towards me, as is, or it can be what the spirit or its energy or its like vibration, whatever you want to call it, brings up in me. And where that difference is, does the spirit want to scare me? Does the spirit want to allure me? Or is it something about that energy of that spirit that scares or allures me, for example? Or do I want to be scared or allured, and there is no spirit, and I just like bring those things up in me and convince myself that something like this is happening to me? These are the foods for thought that I want to bring up. To reiterate, I don't think that calling any experiences like this, even if they go into the extreme psychosis, is helpful to anybody. I don't think that is our job to help people who are experiencing a crisis on TikTok without being asked. So this is not a video aimed at anybody who, in my opinion, could use a little bit of help. This is maybe just a prevention video if you think that you do or you could benefit from more reflection and more self-knowledge to like think about, and to think about more critically about the experiences with spirits and in your practice that you have, and to learn to discern where those experiences come from within and where those experiences come from without, because it's an important distinction. And the more we are in this technology content driven age, the less we are trained and allowed to find that border again and again, and see where we begin, where we end, and where the rest of the world is, and where those influences combine and mix, and what becomes of them. Yeah, I think that's all for me for today. If you like this style of unscripted but maybe noted thoughts on I think spirituality and magic and pop culture would be appropriate. And or if you are into animism, spirits, plants and stuff, then maybe follow this channel. I probably will have like 2 types of videos, which is planty, spiritual, botanical, herbalism decks that I create and stuff to do with them, and then also this type of video where I find something somewhere and it evokes some sort of thought process in me that I want to share with people who may be also interested. So thank you for being here in this ending part of the video. I appreciate you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.